welcome to our Senior Spotlight series. We are joined by Marichelle, a liberal studies major, and she is graduating this term, but I will let her talk more about that in her story as well. So awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast and joining us for the Senior Spotlight.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So to start, could you tell us a little bit about you, I guess, whatever you feel called to share, including your major, where you're from, and then kind of why you chose your major.
Okay.
And then in that, you can also, if you want to go into talking about your college journey, you can kind of just lead into it that way too, if you'd like.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
So, my name's Marichelle, and I was born and raised here in Central Oregon. I was born in Pineville, and then I pretty much grew up in Bend, Oregon. I went to school here and just have been very involved in the community over the years.
Awesome.
I'm a liberal studies major, and honestly, I was a liberal studies major just because it seemed like a way to not pigeonhole myself, because long term I want to go into art therapy and kind of from like counseling and the social justice perspective.
Oh, okay. Oh,
so
nice.
I wanted to have a degree that I could create like different perspectives where I could take art classes but also psychology. I'm a dual enrolled student at COCC and OSU-Cascades. So when I was at COCC, I had a heavy focus in anthropology and psychology courses.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I transferred over to OSU-Cascades, and I had like the choice of either going into psychology or liberal studies. And I went into liberal studies because I just didn't want to be pigeonholed, and I wanted to have a wider breadth of like a more holistic and like foundation for me to go into school, and then just being like a psychology major. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it totally does. That's unlike a totally different realm. That's kind of why I chose business, just because I felt I had like so many different majors, and I like had no idea what I wanted to do. And then business just kind of made sense because I was like, oh, I guess I could take business and do a lot of things. Like I could start my own business and stuff. But yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, and then just going on my college journey, I've probably been in college since I was 16. As I was telling you before, my grandmother, she would, as like a birthday present, give me a free art class at the community college. So I take the bus from my house to the community college, and I do like a painting class or an art history course. And when I was in high school, I was dual enrolled at the community college while I was doing high school courses.
Okay.
So I was taking like advanced high school courses that were like for college credits.
Yeah.
So when I came to COCC, I had about like probably 30 or 20 credits already under my belt, and I did one term there and I really enjoyed it. I did like an abnormal psychology class and was like really involved with COPE, which was the psychology club on campus.
Oh yeah. Oh,
and
I have a friend who was in that club. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
we did a presentation on like growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Okay.
So like I already like kind of dipped my toes into it, but I had the opportunity to take a gap year with Carpe Diem Education, which is based out of Portland State University.
Okay.
And I had gotten that contact through my high school art teacher, Carrie Erickson. She recommended, because she knew that I wanted to travel and she knew I was interested in art therapy, that I get some fields experience. And she had her own experience, I believe, in South America. So she recommended for me to seek out this program, and I connected with one of the mentors. And through that, I was able to be introduced to Carpe Diem, and I went in 2015 to India and traveled for about 3 months, doing a loop in northern India, doing service projects while receiving credit through Portland State. So I was also doing like interviews and working with local members in the communities on like art, psychology, and philosophy while I was there.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was just a really amazing time. Honestly, it's been about 5 years, but honestly, I can like close my eyes and see just like vivid details, and it was life-changing. Like that's an understatement. It was just like the biggest experience of my life.
Yep,
And
I can't even imagine.
Through that, I got hands-on experience in my field. I got to work with an NGO that was actually based in Varanasi that worked in the red light district, and see like art therapy and how it was a rehabilitation tool for like women that were there and their children. And I just was so inspired. I was like, when I came back, I started looking at different contacts that Carpe Diem had, because they're excellent with their students and alumni. So I just told them, like, hey, I want to do an independent trip to Southeast Asia. There's an organization, Art Relief International in Thailand, that does similar work, where it's like art therapy based with like social minorities, with sex trafficking, and also just like at-risk mothers and people and youth in the community, especially the indigenous community in the area. So I told them where my internship was. I told them basically my itinerary, and they gave me all the contacts. So I formed my own trip.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, I guess so your trip was pretty much just through this program, basically. So it was like structured, kind of.
Yeah, it was completely
that's nice.
structured,
Okay.
and they teach you how to travel and independently.
Oh, yeah.
And,
that's nice.
We went through probably I want to say 16 different places in India and did like different service projects. We'd spend a week in one area, and then we'd move to the next and the next. And then when I came back home, I just had like complete reverse culture shock. It was really hard for me to adjust, and I just knew I wanted to travel. So I just started trying to figure out like how I could get back out there. And like I said, I reached out to Carpe Diem, and they gave me their contacts. I found an internship. I sold my car. I sold like everything I could so I could fund my trip.
Oh my gosh,
and
that's
then
awesome.
I went and did it.
Yeah. And you said you were 18 when you first went on that trip.
Yeah, I was 18. So then I traveled again when I was 19, and I did an internship there. But my long-term goal was to do another internship in southern India, which was a art therapy-based one in a women's empowerment group. So I went to Thailand to get like my hands-on experience in the field, and then I applied for this other internship in South India. I came back from that trip, and I just had so many experiences that really filled me up, but also just understanding that my next point of contact was going back to this internship in southern India. So I just came back, and I worked for a year, like a solid year. I worked every kind of job I could. I think I was working like 2 to 3 different jobs, and just saved up so I could go on this other internship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I did it. I went for 4 months in southern India in a place called Auroville, right outside of Pondicherry.
Okay.
And I got a lot of hands-on experience working in like street art projects, working in like community settings. I had just a wonderful time. Like it was just a beautiful community and beautiful area. Some of like my closest friends that I'm still in contact with are from that part in my life. So and then after I came back from that, I decided that I wanted to go back to school. Like I wanted to be a serious college student, not just dabble in it. So
totally.
I came back, and I just pretty much got super involved at the community college, got involved with the different diversity groups on campus and the clubs, and just took it from there. And then once I was finally ready, I transferred to OSU-Cascades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, okay, I'm curious, what would you say is like what was your biggest takeaway, I guess, from all of your, just from your travels? You probably had a lot of takeaways, as you said it was so life-changing, but like if you could just say one thing or a couple things, like how did it change you, or what did you learn, I guess?
I think for me, there's just so much focus on productivity and what success means for us, especially in an American context, and when you're exposed to different cultures and different places, you understand that intelligence is viewed in different ways, and so is success. Like someone that maybe doesn't decide to do the college route is just as successful and happy with their life as someone that does. It really just depends on what you want to do with your life. I think it's really taught me the value of rest and just gaining perspective before moving forward, and just the value of having different perspectives. It's really just even recently with like the recent social and political climate, I'll just think about my experiences when I was traveling and just how I would be in different contexts, in different areas, where in some contexts I was a minority, or I was like the only person there that could like speak English or was white, and you know, in an area that it was completely cut off from like the tourists and the local market, and just really understand like what the people in that area need, what's important to them, what's their forms of intelligence, and respecting that, understanding that in certain areas, like maybe they don't have access to, you know, college or a certain education field, but when it comes down to it, like, they know how to grow rice and successfully survive in this environment, and I wouldn't.
Totally.
And just having respect for that.
Yeah.
And I think, I think when I go back to it, it's really just being humble and being able to say you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Can you teach me? I don't know how to say this. Could you teach me in your language?
Yeah.
Or could you show me this? Versus coming from a perspective where you know everything and you have nothing to gain.
Yeah.
Like, their cup's already full. And
Totally.
you could take so much from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think, American culture kind of glorifies, like, you just knowing the answer and just, I mean, like you said, productivity and hustle and stuff. And, I mean, there's like so much to be said for just, like, getting out of, like, your zone of, like, that's what I love about travel. And I think a lot of people love about travel is you just get out of your realm of, like, what everything is defined as, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. Or, like, the norms, I guess, of whatever, you think your norms are, like, reality, when, like, reality is, like, whatever you make it to be. And so, like, different, and different cultures have different realities as to what, I don't know. It's interesting.
Just, like, as a Westerner and someone that comes from that, like, recognizing that you have this positionality and you have your own baggage, especially from an American perspective, but just also understanding that I just go back to, like, there are different forms of intelligence and different ways of living in the world, and no one way is better than the other. It's just what works for that area.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, I thought I turned my phone off.
No worries.
Absolutely. Awesome. So then, when you got back from your travels, you said it was kind of a culture shock. How long after you got back did you start, I guess, school again, and then,
I would definitely say that in the intermittent period, like, between my trip to India and then Southeast Asia, like, I just was very much had reverse culture shock, had a lot of issues just adjusting back, and wasn't really sure. I wasn't working at the time, but I just knew that I wanted to travel again. So I tried to go to school, and I literally had an anxiety attack. Like, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't sit in front of a book right now and read. Like, I need to go out and experience. I need to figure out, like, what I want and, like, what I can contribute. And for me, just, like, coming back the second time when I had done my second internship, and I was just like, okay, I know what I want to do. I know where I need to go. And it took me probably, like, 2 or 3 months, and I just found in at COCC by taking their wilderness first aid course, which was excellent.
Oh,
and
nice,
From there, I saw, like, a poster that was, like, gender and society, and I took that class. And then once I took that class, paired with a bunch of other classes, I was like, okay, I want to come back to school. I have certain jobs or things I want to do with my life, and I can't do it with my level of education right now, so it's, like, time to go back to school.
Yeah. Did you feel kind of more ready, or was it still kind of hard at first?
I felt more ready.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like I was ready to digest. Otherwise, I'd just be working, and then I knew that I didn't want to, like, travel again.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to actually, like, get a concrete experience to move forward.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. What drew you to liberal studies then? Did you think your travels, like, influenced your choice in major?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
It was that, and it was also just, like, transferring into OSU-Cascades. I just had all these different courses from all these different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And I had previous experience I did an internship in New York where I was working with people with disabilities and people with autism, and I did, like, 300 hours worth of, like, field experience.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah. Wow, you've gotten a lot of, like, life experience. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I came back, and just the way that, like, all those life experiences and courses, because through the course of my academic career, I've probably been to, like, 5 or 4 different schools, like COCC, OSU-Cascades, one in Arizona for, like, a brief term, and then this New York, and then PSU through. So it was like, it was the one thing that actually kind of made sense, which was interesting because when I first came back, I definitely just was always a psychology major. Like, that's always how I thought of myself. I was super involved in the psychology club on my campus, and I really wanted to go further with like art therapy, but also positive psychology and like positive psychology theory. So it was really interesting to come back and be like, okay, how do I make sense of all this life experience in a degree that will create a solid foundation for me to either do grad school or even like work with NGOs and different things.
Okay, awesome. So do you think, I feel like, does liberal studies kind of like, it has a lot, would you say it has a lot of psychology in it as well?
Yeah,
like, do you think they're kind of like,
completely. The courses I normally can choose from for my core major for liberal studies is like psychology, anthropology, sociology, English, like it's the whole breadth of work.
Awesome. And then, so do you know, what do you plan to do with your degree after college? Do you know? Like, or what what do you plan to do, I guess, after you graduate? And it doesn't even have to be like, what are your plans?
It's an interesting thing with COVID. Everything's kind of like hypotheticals right now.
That's kind of true,
The last, like, if you were to ask me a year from now, I would have had everything planned out, even had like an itinerary, you know, but then COVID hit and it's kind of like,
all that is, over the wall.
It's like, oh well.
Totally.
I'm definitely a big person on gap years, on taking breaks. It's very valuable to rest and just have different perspectives, get a different perspective, especially if you can outside of the United States on the world. So I really was gearing towards doing any kind of travel trip that I could. In particular, I did 2 years at COCC in a German course, and I became really close with my German teacher. And she got her master's from a program in Portland where they do a German intensive language school for the summer. So that was my plan a year ago, was to apply for this and probably get a really good scholarship and do that for 3 months, and then they have exchange opportunities. So I was like actually looking at like doing some kind of educational thing in Germany. Or I've had a lot of friends that have taught like in China or Vietnam. I would love to teach in Japan. Like I've always just thought that would be, I know that I love the culture and I'd love to be in that area for like a year, and I thought that like one of the best ways to do that is either through like a teaching opportunity or an exchange. So that was kind of my idea. With COVID, I really don't know. It's
just gonna kind of see what happens.
I've looked into doing service gap years. I'm totally open to doing something like the Peace Corps, but it's, again, I'm not sure if I want to do the Peace Corps through a Zoom.
Can you? Is that what they're doing?
Kind of.
Oh, really? Okay, nice.
That's just like in a remote format, and then they'll go back in person once we're all clear. But I definitely have, my gap year mentor was a Peace Corps volunteer and mentor, and just have these amazing stories. She'd been to like all 7 continents just done like really meaningful, like powerful work. And I mean, it helps that they help with like grad school and alumni connections. So
that's awesome. So I guess you'll just, so it kind of depends on like when we open up and what that looks like.
So far, just because of hypotheticals, I want to do like a trip to go see friends in like Seattle. I want to go to the Hoh Rainforest, I think it's called, in Seattle. It's like one of the only rainforests in like North America.
Oh, really?
So
cool.
I want to do like a camping trip with some friends up there, but other than that, I know that I'm not ready to go to grad school. I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to make sure that when I do commit to grad school, it's, in person.
Definitely. I think a lot of people are feeling that. It's like, take a break from the online environment.
So whatever I do, I just want to do something with my hands. Like, it's long overdue.
Absolutely. Do you think you will go back to grad school eventually? I'm definitely looking at grad school. I'm really torn on if I want to continue with like a counseling focus and then do like art therapy on the side, or just like recently with my roles in like student government and the things I've worked on, I'm looking at maybe going into some kind of field where I could do policy. I love looking and going to Salem, the capital, and seeing these like female legislators and like creating policies that are for like our populations and for groups that haven't been considered for a long time. Like, that's super empowering to me. And it's definitely like, if there's an educational or if there's a pathway to it, like a lot of people actually in politics come from a liberal studies background.
So
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of makes sense though, because you kind of have like a broad overview of like, yeah,
yeah.
like people. My view of liberal studies is like it's kind of you kind of just get to know like people and different cultures. Is that kind of what you would say liberal studies is about, or how would you define liberal studies?
I would define liberal studies as just like a broad overview instead of just like pouring all your resources into one cup. Like a psychology major would just focus solely on psychology courses, or sociology would just solely be in sociology, like all those courses. I get to dabble in like all these different courses and see how they connect with each other.
Okay, that's nice. So it's really just like well-rounded. Like you can kind of just like get different perspectives on different things. Yeah. Okay, I like that. I feel like that is kind of necessary for politics too. You know, although maybe a lot of politics isn't like that, but awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess so what are you doing at OSU right now? If you want to talk more about what you do at student government.
Yeah.
And then maybe in that same realm, what have been some of your favorite experiences at OSU-Cascades?
Yeah, so I work with ASCC, that's our student government on campus, and I'm the director of student advocacy. I have just been really working on securing like our student resources on campus, so I manage our food pantry, our safer living kits, and our child care subsidies. And with the food pantry and the safer living kits, because of COVID, we had to switch to a completely remote format. My successor before me, or I guess I'm their successor, they set up a system where we send grocery gift cards to students, so it can reach students and they don't have to come to campus to get physical resources. So we send them like $50 grocery gift cards each term. And that can be like the grocery gift cards, the food vouchers, and then we currently have it set up where people can fill out like a form online so they can get physical resources if they need.
Okay.
So that's been really good, and same with our safer living kits, which is basically the same idea but with hygiene items. Like we have a huge stock of hygiene items, from anything from like contraceptives to menstrual products to like shampoo, conditioner, like everything basically we have on stock. Awesome. So if you know anyone that needs those things, we have
anyone
them.
Needs them.
Yeah, we have them available.
Well, that's good to know. That's awesome.
In our campus. And then the child care subsidies, which actually in the GRC down below us, we have the Little Bees child care program.
Okay, yeah.
And we give student parents full scholarships.
Okay.
So
for child care?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
really nice.
They can enroll for their kids. The maximum amount, I believe, is like $600 or so. Okay. But every term, student parents can apply, and that will cover their full enrollment for their children on campus childcare, but then also off campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that be through like different childcares in just like in town?
Yeah, basically. Or even just like if you have proof of a babysitter or something like that.
Oh, okay.
It just has to be someone that is like not part of your family. Like it's someone that you pay for childcare. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I just have been taking over that, and then recently, in the last 3 months, I took on another project, which was really exciting to me because it actually came to me from COCC. I was working with our liaison with the dorms there, and they brought to my attention that there have been an issue just with students having access to menstrual items.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was an RA at those dorms for like 2 years.
Yeah. Do you know Karthik?
I do know Karthik.
Yeah.
Actually, is he still working there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but he was the one that he was the liaison because I was in student government at COCC, and he's like, hey, like, is there any way we could put like free dispensers for pads and tampons in our bathrooms?
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea.
Because we have no access, and we just have a huge issue with that. And I was working on that project when I was at COCC, and then COVID hit, and it just like killed everything.
Because I think our dorms, I think, stayed open, but theirs didn't, I don't think.
No, everybody had to leave.
Yeah.
So that pretty much like was a stick in the mud, and I was really sad about that because I was in the final stages of finalizing it and had done all the research, and our council had approved it and everything. And then COVID hit, and our funding, everything was just frozen.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do anything about it. So I came to COCC, or OSU-Cascades, I get mixed up, being dual enrolled.
Yeah, no, I feel like me too.
Yeah, I always get my emails mixed up all the time.
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, it's hard to toggle sometimes.
But I came to OSU-Cascades, And the project, the person I was working on, the point of contact, which is this company called AntFlow, and I believe they're based out of Ohio, but they provide free dispensers and free tampons and pads that are like biodegradable, and they're part of like a social justice initiative against period poverty, where for every 10 bought, like every 10 products bought, they donate one to an NGO that's like actively on the front lines of addressing period poverty in our communities. So they reached out to me again in my position at OSU-Cascades, and I brought it up to our council, and through like going back and forth to our contact at AntFlow, we finally wrote up a proposal and got it approved by SFC, and now that's going to be in all our bathrooms, including our gender
at the Cascades.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh,
yeah.
That's awesome.
So I've been working on that. That's been like probably my proudest achievement, just because it's something that I know I've experienced. Many women in my life, many people that menstruate, you know, experience that in their lives, and they need that service.
Yeah.
Even just like going remote, like the most requested item we get for our Safer Living kits is the menstrual items. Yeah. And it's, I mean, a lot of people don't know about this service. They don't know how to go online. Yeah. They don't know how to go through a middleman service. And it affects everyone. I mean, like, it has a detrimental effect to people that are from, like, you know, first generation, low income, BIPOC or LGBTQ, people with disabilities. Like, it's a huge issue. And honestly, in a global conversation, like, Scotland provides this service completely free for all their citizens.
Oh, really?
New Zealand has followed with providing it in all their public education institutions. And now it's in France. I feel like every other day I read something like, I believe in Gambia they lifted the period tax.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so it's happening. It's happening around the world. It's just in the U.S. we really need to push for that. So I've been pushing for that on our campus, and as what I know of with AntFlow, we're the first public institution in Oregon to provide that service.
Really? Oh, wow.
Completely
That's
free
awesome.
for our students.
That's like kind of one of those things that like I never like think about, because I'm like, oh, it's just the way it is, that you just, you know, you just have to figure it out, and if you don't have anything, you don't have anything, you know.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like toilet paper and condoms on our campus are completely free.
Oh yeah, that's it. Condoms before tampons. That's interesting. Yeah.
So it's something that's really needed,
and it's good protection. Yeah.
And literally, just in the weeks that I've been working on this, my boss, Taha, who is our student body president, made me aware that in Oregon we have legislation right now on the Menstrual Dignity Act. It's HB 3274. I have to double check on that. Yeah. But I provided testimony on it, and it's basically a bill that will require all of Oregon public institutions, like education institutions, to have funding set aside to provide this service.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
And it'll be, with the new amendments that they put in, it'll be in female, gender inclusive, and male bathrooms.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so it's something that's currently in the works. When I did my testimony, there was like 30 to 40 other people.
Wow.
So it's like...
It's a big thing.
And even in senior high, they've been lobbying for 3 years, I believe, our public education school board to have this service on their campus.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. That is, well, that's sweet. Well, that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, and we just got approved by SFC, which is our student fee committee for this project, and then operations council. So we're just in the final steps of finalizing our contract.
Awesome. Yay.
Yeah.
That's good. So
I'm excited. I mean, like, I'm probably not going to see it because it'll be spring or summer, but just to know it's like on its way. Yeah. It'll be there.
Yeah. At least you can know you left a mark in some way. Although everyone leaves a mark just by being here, but I've been thinking about that a little lately too. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my last term. Like, what mark would I like want to leave? You know, and so I mean, you can do that in a variety of ways, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. So. And then okay, cool. So I guess leading into the next question, which I kind of asked already, and maybe that was your answer to it, but like, what have been some of your favorite experiences, I guess, at OSU? Or would that be being a part of student government, be a part of it?
I think being a part of student government, it's just really nice. I was involved in student government when I was at COCC, and I got to go to Salem and lobby for student bills and really be a part of the community.
That's
and,
awesome.
Just learn about like activist and social justice movements happening in Oregon. And then coming to OSU-Cascades, it was just like the next step. Like I thought about it, but especially with COVID, and I live with my mother who's a vulnerable person, and I take care of her. Like, it was one of the only job options I had at the time. Otherwise, I'd have to do something that was more like survivor and high-risk exposure.
Yeah.
So it just kind of naturally came, and then when I took it up, it took me a while to figure out, like, what I was actually doing, because it was, like, one of my first times being in we had a high volume of requests coming in, and just, like, trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I do this?
Yeah.
But once I was able to get that grounding and understand my position and what I could do in that position, it was really just really powerful to work with other people. And at first, like, we all come from different backgrounds and we all have these different perspectives of like what's important on campus. And it's kind of like not isolating, but just like it takes time to get more familiar. But just even in the last like 3 months or so, I feel like I've gotten really close with my team and just being able to communicate and get things done on campus. And I just, like I said before, I love that our university is so independent and so new. So, like, we have a lot of voice in the direction that we want to take it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say you're most excited about in your life right now? And I guess that can be graduating if you're excited about graduating, whatever.
Yeah. I would definitely say it's graduation for me. That's a really big thing for me. I'm the first like woman in my family to graduate, and
that's awesome.
There's just been like a lot of sacrifices for me to go, and I mean, I've been in school 6 years.
Yeah.
And like a really big thing for me is the Lavender graduation, which is specifically for like LGBTQ and the queer communities. And when I found out that OSU-Cascades does that graduation, that was like literally when I was in my hardest points in like COVID or just like remote, and like just my eyes were burning out from like Zooms and screen time. I would just have this vision of like graduating with this lavender sash and like being celebrated in the community for like my diverse perspective. And that's really poignant to me because like in the past times I've experienced, you know, like discrimination or violence because of that part of my identity. So I think that it's just so cool that we create that space for members in our community to be recognized for that diverse perspective. Yeah. So I think that's like something that has really carried me through. Even if it's like we're doing it virtually, I'm already like looking at the sashes and like I want to wear it.
Yeah,
I want to have that in my, you know, in my room or in a place of like, if I continue with higher education, I want to have that proudly displayed so other students can see that and see that that is appreciated in these spaces. Yeah. And then I'm just really excited, me and my partner just have a really strong relationship, and that's been so nice because I've just been traveling and had a lot of experiences where I just couldn't have a relationship and really couldn't invest in that part of myself. Like, I just didn't feel like it was ethical, honestly. Because you're
to
just like
be gone all
over.
the time, or
So I've really just enjoyed that, and that's been like a really important part of my life in the last year. And honestly, it's the one thing that like makes it so I can do these things.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. That's really powerful. I didn't know that OSU did the lavender, the lavender sashes. Is that kind of what it is? Is it's like just a lavender sash that you have to kind of signify?
Yeah, it's a lavender sash, and it has like, normally it'll have like probably the flags, probably like the pride flag, the more updated one I'd assume by now, but it just has like different perspectives. For me, when I was working in New York, I went to the 50th Pride anniversary in New York, and just having that experience and being surrounded by people that were just like decked head to toe in rainbow, like and then coming back here and just having that new perspective. So it's just a really big deal for me.
Absolutely. That's awesome that that OSU recognizes that. That's one thing that I really like about OSU is they're always so like open, just about like being open-minded to growth and like learning about just representing everyone and anyone. And so have you seen that in OSU Cascades? Like, they're pretty good at like representation and being open-minded and like progressing in
Yeah.
like those spaces.
I would say so. I've seen that in some ways with the decisions that we've done. I do feel like we have a lot of room to grow, and how we can do that is as students advocating for that on our campus.
Yeah.
When we had the student life survey back in winter, just like the automatic feedback we had is we need more diverse representation. We need more diverse spaces. A huge part of that is lobbying for our Student Success Center, which if you're interested, on April 14th, we're doing OSU-Cascades Lobby Day.
Oh, okay.
And the Student Success Center is trying to address that. Like at COCC, we have the Multicultural Center. We have all these paid positions that are dignified for the different affinity groups.
Yeah.
But we don't have that at OSU-Cascades.
Sure.
We only have one person, and they're part-time. They're not full-time.
Yeah.
So that's a big ask that we're doing in student government is a full-time position for DEI, because we believe that these visions are important, but if we don't have the budgets, if we don't have the actions behind it, then it's just empty words and fluff letters.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you know much about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Lab that we just launched? I know Erica leads it.
Yeah, a little bit. I've heard of Erica's work in the community. I mean, she's such a big voice. I've seen her present at the Unmused conference, and then Love Thy Neighbor, I think that, or Love Your Neighbor. I think she does some project like that. Yeah. But no, I haven't heard much about that. Our diversity and inclusion coordinator with ASCC, Michael Tornada, he's been working actively with Aaron Rook to create some kind of programming. But again, with the reality of COVID, it's just shut down over and over and over again.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hopefully next year we'll all be open and yeah.
But I think my key takeaway, especially to the student body, is if you want to see these services, advocate for them.
Yeah.
Tell people, tell your teachers, tell your administrator, tell us as student body government, because we're the student voice.
Totally.
What ways we could be more diverse? What ways could we include these services? How could we streamline this and support it in real actions versus just words?
Yeah, that's a really good point, yeah. So, I mean, the key is really just, like, change starts from students.
Yeah.
And just speaking up and,
Yeah, and having that power to speak up, because I feel like a lot of students don't feel like they can advocate for themselves.
Right, yeah. I feel like it's maybe even harder with COVID, because you just feel like you're just one person sitting behind a screen, you know, and everyone, I think, feels so removed from it all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Awesome. So, let's see. I think you answered a lot of these questions already in some of your other answers. Okay, how are you planning to celebrate your graduation, and if you're planning to celebrate it?
I gotta admit, it was a really bittersweet moment when I got the email that said we're all on virtual. Like, I was really hoping that we would be in person, even if it was just small cohorts. I heard about, like, a high school that did ski lifts at Bachelor.
Yeah, I heard that too.
And I'm just like, why can't we do that?
I know, that would be really cool.
I'd be like, I would trade that, you know.
I heard someone say something about that, but I'm not sure if it was just, like, a rumor. They're, like,
thinking about it.
Yeah, they're thinking about it or what. So,
yeah.
Hopefully, maybe something comes into fruition, but we'll see.
For me, it's what's most important to me is just being with my family, especially like my grandmother and my mom. Like, this is a really big thing for them, because they've sacrificed a lot so I could get my education and do the certain things I did in my life. So to be able to have them around me, especially with my partner and just other people that are close to me, I mean, like, yes, I want the big ceremony, and if we are ever in person again and they offer that option, I want that memory. Like, that's the vision that's carried me through, is just like being able to turn over my tassel and be surrounded by like my people in school that I did this journey with. But right now it's, you know, you got to make the best of the situation.
You do, definitely,
Yeah.
At least, I mean, will you be surrounded by your family, even if you're just virtual? Like, that's good. Okay.
Yeah,
At least
we'll
you can make
be
the best
able
of it
to
in that
be
way.
together, in person together as well, just because it's like a small gathering. But yeah, that's the main thing for me.
Yeah, awesome. And then, who has had the most impact on your time here at OSU Cascades? Is there a person one person or teacher or faculty or friend or?
That's such a hard question because as a dual enrolled student, like there are some instructors that I had at COCC, and then there are some instructors that teach both at COCC and OSU Cascades. I don't want to say one person in particular because I just have so many professors. It's probably, I'm completely biased, but it's just so empowering for me to see like women instructors and to see women instructors that literally look like maybe they're 10 years older than me, you know, and like have similar experiences to me. Probably one of my like favorite instructors is like Christina Cappy. Like I love her. She's anthropology professor and she taught at COCC and at OSU Cascades, and just the way she teaches her courses and her life experience and the things she's done in her life is very applicable to what I've done in my life because of traveling. But I mean, like so many other professors, honestly. I just feel really empowered when I'm in those places because I see kind of like a pathway to it. If I ever wanted to teach or if I ever wanted to be in a leadership role like that, it feels accessible to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's really hard. I honestly, like, I don't want to give credit to one professor over another because honestly, because of my major, I don't spend time with just one professor. I get like a wide breadth of people. Probably one of the most like influential people. Is it okay if it's not at OSU Cascades?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. Because I think we have so many students that are dual enrolled or transferred or
At COCC, I just, especially with the diversity and affinity groups on campus, like Christy Walker and Gordon, I wouldn't be in student government if it wasn't for those people because they saw this potential and leadership in me that I didn't see. And they just pushed me to be involved. They were there for me. They always like encouraged me, especially like Michelle Carey and just people that were on that campus were really community oriented, and even if they didn't know like my personal background or story, they just always made sure I felt welcome on campus. So that was really big for me. And then my German teacher, she's like awesome. She invites me all the time over before COVID for like German Christmas parties and stuff like that. And just like really got me involved with language groups in town, and it just made me feel, especially after traveling and just having so many experiences, because like the diversity is here. Like we have a diverse population, but compared to like when you travel outside of the United States and just have exposure to so many cultures and come back here, it's hard to connect with that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I know a couple of the people that you mentioned, but COCC for me too was a huge just kind of like played a huge role in shaping me as a person, and I mean not just the college, but like the people at the college, and there's like such a strong community at COCC, and
I really enjoyed.
I love COCC.
I was part of like different diversity projects on campus, like the meeting, which was a hypothetical meeting between MLK and Martin Luther King, and I painted a portrait of Malcolm X for that.
Okay. Yeah.
But I also was involved with the season of nonviolence, which I've gone to continually throughout the years. I just love it. It's like probably had the biggest influence on me, honestly, just in the current community that we live in, and just having community conversations about these difficult topics. It's really, I feel like that's really been foundational for me. And just having those relationships, like you can be academic and you can read about all these things, but actually having relationships and people you care about and you want to show up for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it makes all the difference. That's why I think COVID is so hard. Because it's harder to build connections and and feel that community and stuff like that. So yeah, awesome. Let's see. I just have a couple more questions for you. Okay. So I guess. Okay, maybe 3 more questions. Okay. So how have you been able to find a personal silver lining in the pandemic, I guess, being online?
I feel like I answered a question recently on this, and it's like, I'm not going to say that COVID made me a better student or made the situation better, but it definitely showed me that I'm resilient and that It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. I wouldn't have been as successful, especially in a remote format, because I have a learning disability with dyslexia, if I didn't advocate for myself.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Like, I
No,
had to advocate for myself. I had to advocate for the different modalities. I had to be in contact and be vulnerable with my teachers and my instructors and tell them, like, hey, this may work for everyone else, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of awkward, you know?
Totally.
In a student position, you haven't even met the instructor. All you get is like stock reply emails. Like,
Yeah.
you never like get that face-to-face interaction. So definitely, I've just made it a habit. If I feel like I'm struggling or if I need extra support, before I would have pushed it off or been like, oh, I can do it, you know. Like, but most recently, it's just been like, nope. Sending this email. Nope, I'm reaching out. I'm making sure they know before I even start the course, these are my things that need to be accommodated. And it's been interesting to me because, like, I haven't had the official diagnosis or had the DAS, and there's a lot of issues with that just because, like, from a financial background, like, people can't afford the tests.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, can I afford to have a disability?
Yeah.
You know? And I never
Totally.
felt
Yeah.
that. I never felt that before
Interesting.
remote learning because it was in person, so it was accessible. I could do things about it. But even now, if I have any dense articles that are like really small text, I have to go and print it out. And I don't have a printer at home. So I have to go to a printing lab, which
Totally. Just makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh, yeah.
I always tell my teachers, it's like, I'm a smart student, I work really hard, but I have these extra things I have to do,
Yeah.
so I might be a little late.
Yeah, definitely. On top of the fact that it's already, you know, kind of difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that for me, it's just really taught me to advocate for myself and just ask for help. Like, we're all in this together, we're all struggling, we all have our backgrounds, and most of the time, I don't think I've had an experience where my instructor has told me, like, no, you know, they want us to succeed, they want us to be successful.
Absolutely.
And they understand, at least most of them do. I haven't had an experience where a teacher's been like, oh, that's too much, or like, absolutely not. Like, they're always like, oh, wow, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
How can I support you?
Right.
Like, what do you need from me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I guess people sometimes don't know how to support you until you tell them how.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad you took that away at least and kind of, and we're still able to navigate, even though I'm sure maybe it was a little difficult.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just like learning to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is like kind of in the same realm, but a different realm. But I was like, I just read something the other day that was about like leadership, and it was just talking about how like, so the best leaders like are unafraid to ask for help, and you know, even if you're like, you know, in a leadership position or whatever, it's always like, and people respect you more if you're like able to like just be like, hey, like I don't know the answer. You were talking about this earlier, like I don't know the answer to this, or I need help, like, and if you just like ask and are like, you know, okay with being vulnerable and admitting that you don't have all the answers, then like, then you can get help from other people because I mean, nobody like does anything alone, and like there's always a community out there that will like support you. And I go back to that because I definitely feel like in a Western context we're very individual in our thinking, and it's more of just like this perfectionism, and when we focus on those things we miss out on so much. Especially when you're trying to like pretend that you're like perfect or
Yeah, exactly. And just to have a collective and a community and understand that, like, even in nature, like, nothing is perfect. Yeah,
absolutely. I really like that idea. Gotta, humbles you a little bit sometimes. It's like, you know, I don't know the answers, and, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, it's just...
Yeah, I try and, like, make a habit of, like, I don't know that. I'm not going to, like, bullshit you or act like I do know that, but let me get back to you. Like,
totally. It can be so easy, though. Like, it's like, it becomes habit sometimes to just, like, pretend like you know something, or, like, to just not admit that you don't know the answer. I've like, caught myself doing that a couple times, and I'm like, why do I even do that? Because it's not, you know, there's no...
It's not productive, honestly.
It's not productive, and, like, you could just ask someone and get the answer, and, there's just... it's not like a competition, you know, to see who knows the most.
Yeah.
So, Awesome. All right, let's see. Okay, so if you were to leave one piece of advice for current students to follow, what would it be?
I think I've said it before, but advocate for yourselves.
Yep.
Especially as a transfer student, dual enrolled, I had to fight for some of my credits to transfer over.
Yeah.
You have to talk to your academic counselors. You have to talk to your teachers and come from a place of, like, you're not wrong, you know, like, constantly. I feel like sometimes, just like early on in my experience with having dyslexia, I believed the notion that I was, like, kind of stupid, or, like, you know, I just couldn't get things that other people could.
Yeah.
And that really pushed me into this box where I'm just like, okay, I'm good at this, like a fixed mindset, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm good at this, and the only place I really could go where I felt competent was, like, the art room, because I could do something with my hands and people would be like, oh, it's beautiful, it's great, it's amazing. But, like, I would write these papers and I would get them back and they would just be covered with red marks, and I'm just like, well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, be able to understand that you have a voice, you have a perspective that's valued.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the first step is believing that, and especially as, like, a woman, and being in the positions that I have been in. Like, one of my favorite podcasts I've been listening to is Unlocking Us with Brene Brown.
Okay. Oh, I love Brene Brown.
Yeah. And one of her podcasts goes over this idea of, like, you don't need to be in a position where you're dominating or having power over people, but having power with. And kind of the practice of ahimsa, which is just, like, do no harm. But then, like, one of the mantras she says is, like, do no harm, but take no shit.
Yeah. That's a good one. Cause
I love it.
I like that.
It's honestly been my mantra for, like, probably the last 6 months. And it's so true.
Yeah,
it's
like
just
that,
like, you don't have to dominate. You don't have to take over. You can lead with your heart and have, you know, intense feelings and passion about things.
Yeah.
But also don't let people step over you.
Right. Yeah. It's a delicate balance. I feel like sometimes, like, in our heads we, like, think those things are different, or, like, like, you know, she's very big on vulnerability. Like, we think vulnerability and strength are different. We think, you know, that, like, when we're vulnerable, we're not being strong, but, like,
if you have a strong back, then you can have a soft chest.
Totally. Well, and it's like, I think what she says a lot is that it's almost like it's almost stronger to be vulnerable because it's hard, you know, rather than just, like, putting on that face of, like, I'm fine or perfect or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
That's really powerful. I like, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess maybe my last question I will ask is, which you may have answered this as well already, but where do you see yourself in 5 years? If you even have a vision.
If I have a vision.
Yeah. Because I think it can be so, like, for me, I'm like, I don't really know. I have, like, kind of an idea, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I am planning on taking the GRE test because I am looking at going to grad school, and that's valid for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm really just looking at the next steps of, like, getting perspective, so I know where I want to move forward with my grad school and just, like, that kind of academic pursuits. 5 years from now, I definitely, by that time, I want to have at least one period where I lived outside of the country for an extended amount of time, either doing an education, an exchange opportunity. I think that's one thing I've really reflected on with COVID, is I just want to get outside of the American bubble for, like, a year.
Absolutely.
And that's a big goal of mine, especially before, like, I want to become a mom and I want to have those kind of experiences. But before that, I really just want to live somewhere else for a year, so it can be a choice of whether I want to live in America versus, like, a default. And just having a different perspective, and not just traveling and being there a couple of weeks, but, like, really settling down in one area, one space for, like, a year. And just understanding that place. And then, I definitely, if you asked me at the beginning of my academic journey if I thought I could go to grad school, I could do secondary education, I'd be like, no. Like, it's completely out of my grasp. But now that I'm towards the end of my undergrad and I have all these, like, lived life experiences and all these role models, just, like, all these people that showed me what success meant to them in different ways and at different ages. Like, it's never been like, oh, I have to do this by this age, or, like, it's never going to happen for me. Some of the people I respect the most, they didn't consider secondary or, like, grad school until they were in their 30s. you know? So I think it's more important for me to reflect and get that real world experience and then pursue my education versus pursue my education and then figure out what I'm going to do.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it kind of, I mean, it seems like your whole journey has kind of been like that, where it's just been, experiences weaved in with school and just kind of figuring it out. And then, it's unique because I love hearing, like, people's stories and their paths, because everyone has their own unique path, and it takes you wherever it takes you.
Yeah, I will say that when I was in high school, I volunteered with our National Honors Art Society, and we did like 300 hours worth of community service.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first times
awesome.
I ever met art therapists that worked with people with disabilities, but also just like people from different backgrounds. And once I understood that could be a profession, and then I went abroad and saw it in an international context, I was like, I want to do that. There are, financial barriers. There are things that I have to work through as like a first-gen student, or what I've heard most recently for that term is a new generation student, which I like that better. But just working through those things to pursue this. But it's like, I know what I want. It's just, how do I work around these barriers?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing your story and, being open. It's, I know a lot of people will love to hear your story, and then, and I love chatting with you. So
cool.
Thanks for joining the podcast. Is there anything else you need to say? I guess you said some closing comments, but
I feel like that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
I don't want to take any more of your time, but just
no worries.
I definitely would, especially coming from, like, I'm the director of student advocacy, like, advocate for yourself. Advocate for the changes you want to see at our school. If you want to see the Student Success Center, then come to Lobby Day. If you want to see more diverse and inclusion and sustainability options, like, we always have a line in our student fee committee and in our student governments. There's there's room set in our meetings every term for people to come forward and provide public comment, for people to email us and be like what they want to see on campus.
Awesome. I'll have to connect with you again too, so I can maybe put some of that stuff in the description, and so more people can find links or stuff to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, but we're in the beginning stages of this university coming here, so we have a lot of power in deciding where this goes from here. So in 5 to 10 years, if people stay here and they have their kids eventually go to the school, what kind of schools do you want your kids to go to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Marichelle.
Yeah.